Welcome to the Business Focus podcast. Before we start, can we ask one thing? 74% of you that watch this channel frequently do not subscribe. If you've enjoyed our videos, please could you do me a favor and hit the subscribe button? It helps this channel more than you know, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the learning gets. Welcome to the Business Focus podcast. Jonathan Herps is the host of the Business Focus podcast. He is a strategic advisor, coach, and mentor to entrepreneurial business owners, CEOs, and senior executives. In this podcast, he chats with entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs of scaling companies. It centers around their entrepreneurial journey so far and their aspirations for their companies.
Hi there and welcome back. It's my great pleasure today to be interviewing Lorraine Gnanadickam. I hope I've got that right.
Perfect.
Thanks, Lorraine. Lorraine is founder and CEO of Food Street, so I'm really looking forward to our conversation. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right, my pleasure. So tell me, Food Street, what is it? How long have you been doing it? Tell us a bit about the journey.
Absolutely. So Food Street is a platform that empowers people through authentic, convenient home-cooked meals. So it actually we started it 8 years ago now, which is hard to believe. It's been 8 years in a different form. So we've pivoted along the way. But we are a meal delivery service. So we provide frozen meals through an e-commerce store. But the big difference between Food Street is that all of the food is cooked by home cooks. And what we're trying to do is really shine a light on the wonderful multicultural diversity of our nation and the foods and the stories that come from people within our local communities. So as a customer, you can go to our website, which is foodst.com.au, and you'll find over 100 different meals from around 50 cooks and from 26 world cuisines. And all of those meals are cooked just like they'd cook them for their own families. So, with some of these big commercial meal companies, it's very much about set menus and recipes that are adapted to suit mass market, whereas what we're really trying to do is service what we believe is an underserved market of a lot of Australians that are looking for their home-style foods from different nationalities.
Fabulous.
So, yes.
Do you deliver nationally?
We deliver across the whole of the East Seaboard, and we are opening up South Australia, Western Australia shortly.
So if I live in Barrel, could I order?
Yes. Absolutely. Get it across to you. Yeah.
So tell me, how do you describe your best customer, your core customer?
Core customer. So being food, obviously, we have so many customers. It applies to really anyone that's looking for an opportunity to outsource their meals. But our biggest segment of customers would be professionals. Food Street is not the cheapest product on the block. All of our product is cooked in small batches by individual cooks. So we're not in a commercial kitchen buying everything in bulk either. So it really is more of a bespoke, almost like a craft beer type industry that we're creating here. So our ideal customer would be a working professional that's looking to outsource and buy meals, but wants something that's really tasty, really high quality, easy to reheat and put on the table, and something that is I guess really high quality and different. So with over 100 different options, and all of those options being authentically made to those family recipes that I mentioned before, it really is a different offering in the market.
I'm going to ask you, having been the coach for one of those large companies, my muscle chef.
Yes.
So I've been in the kitchens where they've got 300 staff working.
Yeah.
How does this actually work? So the home cook cooks it, freezes it, and then ships it to you. How does it work?
Yeah, and yes, it is over the years we've refined it into a very, very well-oiled machine. But I think that's the first thing that everyone kind of, when they hear about our business, they think, well, how do you coordinate that? And this is what we've worked on doing. So people apply to us and we get people from the community, and we have people that have never cooked for money before. They're, someone's mum who has an amazing butter chicken and has always been told she should try and get that to market, all the way to the sous chef of the Sheraton Grand who's cooked for us. We also have a very high profile ex-chef who's cooking for us at the moment. So we have a broad mix of people that come to Food Street, but our motto is everyone has a seat at our table. So as long as it's really good food, and once they apply, we basically taste and sample all of the food, which is, I'm not complaining about that job at all. So we get to taste it, and if it fits our menu and if it's of that standard that we're looking for, then we approve that product and we order in small batches from their first small batch would be the first thing. We provide them with all the packaging. So everything's standardized so that we get that consistency and standardization for our customers. And then they cook to fill the packaging. And then they freeze it on site, and then we pick it up and bring it back to our warehouse where we store. We've got 2 big walk-in freezers and we store all of the meals there. And so when orders come in online, we basically pick and pack from the freezers, and then every week we check our par levels and reorder from our cooks. So it is quite a an operation compared to, I guess, one commercial kitchen. But the benefits that come through that food and the way that food tastes and the different types of meals that we're able to source are well worth the effort.
Okay. Well, thank you for describing it to me.
Sure.
So listen, we've all been through the pandemic.
Yes.
Your business must have been majorly affected. What actions did you take in the pandemic that have stuck with you going forward?
Yeah, sure. So interestingly enough, the pandemic for us was actually a really good time in a business sense. I think what it did was all of a sudden everybody was stuck at home. And before the pandemic, out there in market, it was all about fresh. It was all about fresh product. Frozen food had this kind of negative connotation because, if you compare it to frozen food in a supermarket, it was usually low quality and not as tasty. So I think what the pandemic did for us was it forced people to find suppliers of food that can be delivered to their home contactless, which we were doing. And we used it as an acquisition strategy. And I think what it did was it re-educated the public in Australia about how frozen meals can be high quality and in a lot of ways a lot more convenient than fresh food in the way that if you've got frozen meals in the freezer, you're at work, a late meeting happens, you were planning to cook something, you're home late from work, you can just pull that out of the freezer and you've got a meal rather than having to call takeaway. Also, there's a lot less waste. So having frozen meals means that you're not throwing out things that you don't get around to cook. So there are a lot of benefits with frozen. So for us, the pandemic was a really positive way of introducing our business. And I think it's changed the perception of frozen meals in Australia across many different companies as well. I guess for us, the biggest challenge was coming out of the pandemic, where in the last few years, where obviously the economy has changed and funding has become a lot more difficult. And particularly in the last, I would say 6 to 9 months, a number of food businesses collapsing, great businesses like Milkrun, Providor and Collab. So all of those businesses were recently funded and were funded quite well. So I think the challenge for us is really getting out there again and trying to raise funding on the back of that has been quite challenging. But I think the pandemic really did, and coming out of the pandemic, when we were in the pandemic, we were really well funded. We had some really good funding. And I think the instruction there, and I guess not just our company, but a lot of companies, was growth at all costs. So it was about getting out there, getting as many customers. Don't worry about profitability. We just need to grow. Whereas now that's completely changed. And I think it's more about driving sustainable, profitable growth, which is what we've done coming out of the pandemic and out of this period. Is we've gone back, done a lot of cost optimization, and really rejigged the business. So we are now growing sustainably, growing quarter on quarter, and we will be out there raising our Series A in the next 6 months.
Great. There you go. Anybody listening? Get in contact if you want to invest. And interesting enough, I was saying to Lorraine earlier, of the 90 odd of these interviews, at least 2 of the interviewees, their companies have raised money based on contacts from this series. So best of luck.
Thank you.
So what do you see? You've talked a little bit about it, but what do you see? What does the future look like, and what do you see as your main challenges going forward?
Yeah, so the future for us is, as I mentioned, is bright. It's been a challenging journey, as I just outlined. I think it's taken us about 6 months to re-optimize the business and change a lot of the costs. But we are getting that traction and growth. And I think for us, the plan is all of our cooks are in Sydney at the moment. And our mission, overall as a business, is to get real home cooking back on tables across the country. And we are doing that because we ship from Sydney to other states. But really, it's about empowering as many people, including all of the cooks in Melbourne and Queensland. So that's a big piece for us, and that's what we'd love to do our next raise for, is to be able to expand our supply base into different states. And then beyond that, I think, we are one of the only companies, actually I think we're the only company in the world doing this particular model of frozen home-cooked food. There are a number of similar businesses across the world, in the States and the UK, that are doing home-cooked meal marketplaces, but they're all hot home-cooked meal marketplaces, which actually we tried when we launched Food Street. We were a hot meal marketplace as well. But it just didn't seem to work for us in Australia, being so geographically sparse. So we pivoted into this frozen model. But I do know that we are the only company in the world doing this particular model. And I think there's a huge opportunity for us beyond setting up Australia to be able to take this into an international market.
Fabulous. So you started, I won't ask you your age, but you started as a business owner, pretty young, really. What do you think has been your biggest learning as a business owner?
Oh my goodness, there's so many learnings.
You can imagine.
Look, I did have a corporate career before I started into Food Street. So, and I was a chef way before I had a corporate career. So, so lots of learnings. I think I'm very grateful that I did have I had about 20 years in corporate in medical devices and pharmaceuticals in a range of different roles, from business development to management. And I think I'm very grateful for that experience, to be able to have had the understanding of how businesses work from that perspective. The biggest lesson as a business owner, what would I say? I would say it would be around fundraising, definitely, but also around. It can get very challenging when it comes to running your own business and carrying the responsibility. It's not the right word, but of managing that business and the cash flows of that business. And I think there are different ways. I think one of the biggest learnings is, you might think that you get to a point where you're stuck. And for me, it's always through a few more conversations or a few days to think it through. And there are always other solutions that come somehow, somewhere. So for me, it's been about learning to trust that and to not get too derailed by that, because there's always points in our business where things get really challenging. So it's about being able to take a deep breath and reassess and come up with a new strategy to overcome it.
Thank you. And it's interesting. Point I'm going to raise about our earlier conversation. Lorraine is heading off to Machu Picchu on Friday for 2 weeks, which to me is, a sign of a mature, stable business that the founder, CEO can go away and essentially have no internet connection, no phone for 2 weeks, and the business is just going to run without it. And that's one of the key things I coach is a self-managing business, and you've obviously achieved that goal. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. And as I said to you before, can't be done without amazing people. And we have a very small team of people in our, I guess, in our HQ, but very competent people and people that are very, very bought into the business, which is a great place to work.
Well, I'm glad. I'm sure they're going to hear that compliment, because it's so important for them to hear it.
Thank you.
So tell me, when you think of the word successful, who's the first person that comes to mind, and why?
Yeah. So to be honest, I don't have anyone that really comes to mind around being successful, and I think that's because my belief around success personally is that it's such an individual and personal thing, and not knowing everybody's situations, it's hard to pinpoint who is actually successful. My definition of success is achieving what I've set out to do. So whatever that might be, and that might be, for me, it's very much tied to my family. But, it could be monetary, it could be family, it could be travel related, et cetera, et cetera. And it changes all the time. So I find it difficult to kind of think of who I know that is successful. I think success out of people I know in my personal life is more around personal contentment, really, and feeling confident and happy with where you are in life at this point in time.
Which is a very, very a real point. I was working on every once in a while I'll sit down and rethink my purpose and just make sure that I'm in touch with where I want to be, and I've just recently done that. And one of the questions I ask myself is, to be successful, if people looking back at me in the future, for me to be successful, one of the key things is my role as a father, and seeing my two 9-year-olds growing up as complete happy individuals. Yeah, so that is one of my two key criteria. The other one is spreading the word of successful entrepreneurs, which is what we're doing here.
Fantastic. On purpose.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So tell me, books, podcasts, biographies that you might recommend?
Yeah, I listen to, we were talking before, but I tend to listen to podcasts and Audible quite a bit because I just don't find the time to sit down and read. I used to love reading, and I have read I've done my executive MBA when I was in corporate as well. So I've done a lot of reading around books, but yeah, I guess podcasts, there's a few that I listen to. How I Built That is quite a good one. I like Startup Therapy. It's just very lighthearted with some really good takeaways for startup founders. What else? And I just read a really good book, which is not really business, but it's more around culture, by an Indigenous elder on Dreamtime, and just trying to understand part of what fascinates me, and particularly with Food Street. So yes, Food Street is a business around food and we create meals. But actually, as I say to everyone, we're actually a business about people in every sense, because when a cook joins or a new meal comes across, there's so much culture and history in that meal. And the reason why that person has joined Food Street to share it with others is because they want to be able to share the stories, the culture, the memories with other people. And whether that's making, their great grandmother proud, or, there's all sorts of stories, and we do a lot of marketing around those stories. And it's something that just fascinates me, is people and culture, and that tapestry of culture and how it actually, just like food, brings us all together. There's so many commonalities through food and through culture, and how we're all interconnected in some way. So yes, that was a really good book. It was by Auntie Munya Andrews, and it was just on the Dreamtime culture and belief system.
Fabulous. I'll go looking for that. It is really fascinating. Culture, particularly Australian Indigenous culture, with the whole Yes campaign. Yes, and happening right now. And I took the family to Uluru last November for my wife's birthday, and really fascinating. The effect it had on us as a family, and really for the first time talking in detail with Indigenous people, understanding, so I'm off feast if you bear with
No,
me.
that's all right. That's interesting. Yeah.
I was fascinated that, and I've got, my children are adopted, so they're from Ethiopia. So we have multiple cultures in my family. But Gator Uluru was fascinating. We had like Uluru and Katajunya, which is the Olgas, is about 65 kilometers away across the desert. And all of a sudden, you suddenly realize why you've got all of these diverse Indigenous languages, because they've got together once every. But actually, they probably never got together.
Probably never.
No water, and so they're absolutely different cultures within 60 kilometers of each other. And it was a really, really, the lessons I learned, and recently I was I'm on a charity board of a charity called Culinary. We had Noel Pearson speaking about the referendum, and his take on the referendum was just extraordinary. Anyway, I absolutely get where you come from.
Yeah, well, I just absolutely love learning about it. Always learning. So yeah.
So, listen, last question. Any last piece of advice or parting words for entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs out there?
I think, look, for me, it's been, like I said, I mentioned before, I've done the corporate career. It's the most challenging. It's almost like what they say about having children, the most challenging, but the most rewarding. And I think the amount that this is for aspiring entrepreneurs. There's always risks that we take as entrepreneurs, but I think it's just a different level of living when you're running a business. And the learnings I've had through running my business have been bigger than any course I've done, any training I've done. It's lived experience, and I wouldn't change it for the world. So, I'll just get out there and do it.
Great advice. Lorraine, we'll put all your contact details, including your website, etc., into the show notes and into the slides, so people will be able to reach out and hopefully buy from you.
Sounds great.
Family chefs. We'll put that out and promote it widely. Thank you so much.
Sounds fantastic. Thank you so much. So great to meet you.
And you. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. Me too. Thanks, Jonathan.
If you are hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode, and for that, we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed this new episode, and if you did, please leave us a review on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, or wherever you watch/listen. Please share this episode with others who may be interested in this topic. If you want to be a guest on the podcast, please send an email to admin@scaleupgrowth.co. Put "Be a guest" in the subject line and tell me a little about yourself. If you want to gauge where your business growth potential is and identify where the biggest opportunities in your business lie, or where the key needs that you need to concentrate on right now are, take our assessment where you will receive personalised advice for improvement. It's quick and free. Go to scaleupgrowth.scoreapp.com. If you would like to work with me one-to-one, I love coaching and get the best outcomes that way. Send me an email to jonathan@scaleupgrowth.co and put one-to-one in the heading. Tell me a bit about your business and let's see how we can apply a great strategy for your business. So that's it for this week. Tune in next time for more great learnings from a scaling entrepreneur.